strangers. That's what's so amazing. And and what I experience is it's the same opening and availability, and it felt as love. And I experienced it as the most profound thing in life. This profound openness and availability that is recognized and felt in our being as this oneness, as this dissolve. And and I sort of think this is what this is all about. This, or main part of this whole story of life, is this profundity we recognize in this dissolving of our boundaries, our oneness, and the love that emerges. And it's the meaning, I think, that it gives us meaning and purpose. And so I just appreciated that, and that whole exercise of, and even meditation in a way is that recognition of that boundary of the space. And the love, in another sense, even emerges in meditation. So I just deeply appreciate all that. That's what's resonating.
Beautiful, beautifully put, Rick. God, I resonate with that so much. Yeah, I do this because of love. You know, I'm a philosopher, and people think that's all to do with the head. But the word means philosophia. It means a lover. Philo means love, and Sophia means wisdom. So it's love, wisdom. It's like those two together. But it's the love which causes me, and it has been ever since my first awakening, when I tasted it for the first time when I was a little boy and headed off on this crazy path. And here I am at 60, almost 61. And it's been trying to chase and serve that love. And you're right. What I love, we can do it online, but, in person obviously is lovely. Not that we can meet in person at the moment. But I mean, my picture on this screen of us happens to be next door to George, who I know well and have known for 20 years. And the number of times that I've been with George and we've seen a whole group of strangers fall completely in love with each other is just too many to count now. And there is nothing better than when we come out of that, the confine of thinking we're just this, and discover, oh, I'm not just this, I'm the whole thing as this. And so that can lead me in really to maybe saying a few words about my approach to spirituality. And then I can come on to, if you like, how that reflects on this current crisis that we're heading into, really, I think. So my approach to all of this has been developing over the decades, and a lot of that has been a process of discovering I was wrong. And that process is still going on, and I'm still discovering I'm wrong quite regularly, which is a profoundly lovely, amazing process. I love it now, because every time I discover I'm wrong, I discover something new, and it gets deeper. And I feel like my understanding gets richer. And our understanding, I think, really matters. You can come into stillness, and that is and the oneness, and everything stops. And that is incredibly profound and really like a foundation. But also we meet life with our understanding, a bit like we meet life on those levels. We exist on these levels. It's just look, we exist as bodies, and what we perceive of the world as a body depends on the body. So, if I take these off, it's all a bit fuzzy. But if I put them on, it comes sharp. And, people without eyes, they can't see it, they don't get this. So how you as an individual aspect of the universe relate to the universe depends on the form. And our form allows us to sense this much of the electromagnetic spectrum, and we get this. Bats get a whole different thing. And then you go to the psyche, and you're also interacting with the reality that's coming to you. And what you're meeting that with is the story that you're telling, the understanding that you have, which is never changing, I hope, for most of us, evolving thing. It's certainly been evolving for human beings culturally. And it's all these things come in, like I suspect many people like me have had a whole load of Indian things come in when they were younger, and then, maybe a foundation in some Christian things which were there, and then some scientific things have come in, and like, how the hell does all this fit together? And we're meeting the world through these lenses, and what we see and how we interpret it. And it is a bit like, the glasses. It's like if you can understand it with clarity and coherence, what you see is far more than if you don't understand it with clarity and coherence. So I have what I call a both and approach, a paralogical or both and approach, which means I'm looking at how can I deepen the experience for myself and others, and how can I deepen the understanding which in turn deepens the experience, and how can we live that? So one of the big changes for me that's happened over the last, I don't know, 10 years or 20 years, is that because the awakening is to oneness, the philosophy I adopted, which was an imported philosophy, off-the-shelf philosophy from India, mainly, although mystics in the West have a similar thing, which is it's all one, which I no longer think. I think actually it's much more interesting than that. I think what we're in is the one in relationship with itself. And when I look around me, that's what I see. I see the one in all these different forms, and each form is in relationship with the one. And I'm one of those forms as Tim. So it isn't all one. It's more interesting. It's the one in relationship to itself. And we looked at that in the meditation I guided you to. I wanted us to find that deep formless being, which you can dissolve your attention into, and it's like nothing exists. It's the emptiness, it's nirvana, it's samadhi, and it's beautiful. And then when you bring your attention back, then this is all here too. And what that I think it points to is that this formless emptiness is arising as a process. Being is in a process of becoming. And through the process of becoming, it is evolved and emerged into you and me. So we've seen this process of the whole universe evolving from being to the most basic qualities, to the physical universe, to the beginnings of life and the biological world. And then from that comes psyche, or the imagination, the soul, this non or trans-material realm that we're having this conversation in. And then right at the cutting edge of that process of evolution, there are some human beings, and this has been going on for a long time, but mostly in very small numbers, now many more. Some human beings, some souls, some psyches, are having the experience of becoming really conscious of their being, which this formless being, which is one with the whole universe. So that through this process of becoming, being is becoming conscious of itself through us. And that's where I put forward this idea of the unividual, the individual now conscious of unity with the universe. Now, this is a big jump for me from the sort of philosophy I came across when I was younger, which was heavily influenced by very old Indian philosophy. And I took the road, I think, that many of my generation did, which was I looked around at me at the religion on offer, which was basically Church of England in my case, and felt that's not up to the job, and went east and imported it all fairly uncritically. So I was very critical of the Western religion, wasn't very critical of the Eastern because it was new and different. Now, over the decades, of course, I've studied that in some detail, and I'm probably just as critical of the East now as I am of the West. And I feel like what we need is something which can evolve from both, capture the greatest wisdom of both, and take us further. So nearly all of the traditions which come from the Axle Age, 2,500 years ago, are based on this idea that, oh, human beings can wake up to this formless oneness, but the way to do it is to reject the separateness. That's in the way. And I get that, because when you probably had this yourself, I know I did, when you first have the awakening, it's so extraordinary that when you come back, it feels like, oh no, I'm back in Tim. How do I get out of this damn thing? But what's changed for me over the decades is that I don't see it like that anymore. What I see is that the individual, what gets horribly dismissed as the ego, as some malign thing that's inside us, that's out to get us, that thing is not, there is no thing inside us out to get us. Our individuality is not a mistake which clouds the oneness. In fact, the opposite. The universe has evolved into conscious individuals, and then through those conscious individuals, it can become conscious of something which transcends the individual, but transcends and includes the individual, to use Ken Wilber's great phrase. And that's what meditation for me this morning was really about. It's like, oh, look, I exist as a body, and then from that body, I exist as a psyche, as a soul, as imagination, which is transmaterial. It's on a whole different level. It's a whole domain, isn't it, that we can go and explore. And then from that, I can be conscious that I'm the universe. And then this enormous love for the universe. And so there's an arising of more and more emergent levels as we go through. And what that does is it turns around the assumption which you find in a lot of old philosophy, old mystical philosophy. And that's the assumption we've fallen from something perfect and we need to get out. So this is the Maya, it's samsara, it's the devil's playground. We've fallen from, God has had a dream and he needs to wake up. This is a mistake. You've developed an ego, you shouldn't do that. You developed human qualities like attachments and a mind, or you shouldn't have that. And that your humanity is fundamentally in the way. Whereas what I want to, been exploring is the opposite, that your humanity really isn't in the way. It's actually beautiful, imperfect and evolving and mixed like mine, I suspect. Well, mine is for sure. A work in progress, let's put it like that. But through that work in progress evolving, something utterly amazing is emerging in the universe, which is a new type of human being, an individual, someone who's themselves, thinks for themselves, is able to experience it for themselves. And yet through that, what they're experiencing is something which transcends the self. And the individual self is like the foundation which allows that transcendence to emerge. So we no longer have to be at war with ourselves or get rid of ourselves or kill the ego or any of that stuff. Rather, we can celebrate our individuality. We can celebrate that this is what we are, and we can acknowledge everything we are. And then that opens up this lovely possibility, which reflects back to what Rick was saying about connecting. And then I went and I picked up on, which is I feel like we can be authentic with each other. Because, I don't know about you, and I don't want to badmouth anyone, but I've been around this now for 40 plus years. And, this whole traditional religious game, the special person on the stage wearing the special clothes, people touching their lotus feet, all of that feels to me done with. And it seems, because it's going in the wrong direction. Because what we need to do is encourage and empower each other as individuals to find this for ourselves and to be our own authority. And inevitably, what happens when people pretend that they are this super being, it comes crashing down. So I couldn't begin to tell you the list of people that I've met or I know of where that's true. I'm sure you know it. Just an endless succession of fallen heroes who have pretended to be something which they're not. But what this approach, this unividualism opens up is the idea of something different. It opens up what we can meet authentically, which means I don't have to pretend to be something I'm not. I can try my best to just be Tim, because Tim is a guy who grew up in Somerset, talks like this, has these qualities, lacks some other qualities. If you got to know me, you'd find out things about me which might shock you. It's like, I'm a person like you. We all are. But I'm doing my best. I really am doing my best. Or more accurately, I'm probably doing my best to do my best, because I don't always do my best. And we can meet then authentically. We can meet as bodies. Oh, look at that. That's a mixed blessing, but a blessing. We can meet as souls, these stories, these evolving qualities, these amazing non-material entities which we have become. And we can meet as the universe itself, this vast formlessness arising as everything. And that seems authentic then. It's like I could look at you and it's, there's another person, there's another soul on a journey like me, but I'm also looking at God. And they're both there. So the authenticity is in seeing both. And that opens up a whole new way of doing spirituality, I think. And it's one which embraces the human condition. It doesn't belittle it. It doesn't make it a mistake, and it doesn't try and push it away. It says, let's celebrate it and let's enter into, not just, so that spirituality doesn't become about withdrawing into the emptiness. It becomes about expanding into the emptiness in order to more fully enter into the process of becoming. And that's the love. Because the forms of spirituality, which just go about, no, just go into the non-dual, all the rest of it's an illusion, they usually lack the love. Because the love is actually when we meet as one and two at the same time. It's not the oneness. The oneness is just empty. It's the becoming which allows us to meet in love. Because that's where we're individual. That's where all consciousness is. There's no consciousness in the one. Because oneness is on everything. The consciousness is subject and object. It's in the one in relationship to itself. That's where that lies. That's where that's waiting. So what I'm interested in creating is a new spirituality, or contributing towards it. There's many people trying, which can take us from an anti-human spirituality into a one that celebrates our humanity, and but still points to this transcending of it into this enormous oneness, and then that the love impels you back in, actually. So that far from dissolving into the, you need to do that from time to time. But from that, you can come back in to this incredible journey that we're on together, which is a bittersweet journey of evolution and emergence. And we can actually enter into this big story of our lives and collectively. And of course, what's happening right now in our big story is that we're probably bracing ourselves for a tsunami of suffering. And that's quite big, potentially. So I'm going to just stop there for a second before I head off into coronavirus, and just see if anyone wants to pick me up on anything I've said or ask anything about what I've said, so I can make clarity. Marion, is it Marion or Manon? I can't remember.
Manon.
Manon, that's right.
Manon. Yeah. Hi, Tim. Hi, everybody. Hi. I love what you're saying, yet there is something that is nagging me inside. And you share that, you came from the East, or you studied the East and everything. And I think most of us also, any one of us comes from maybe different teachers, but most from the same core direction, I would say. Which that, there's only one. So there's not two. And this is the East, right? The basic knowledge of the East. And so when you bring, and I agree that we seem to become, awareness is becoming aware of itself. But what I'm wondering of what you're saying, that there's the object, subject object, but this is two. Yes. So, I know there's a paradox. We are in the world, we are form. There is time and space, and there's a growth development that is part of the process, and yet we're not. We're already full and complete, and nothing is missing.
Okay, so sorry. Okay, well, two things. One is, I'm not sure about that last bit, and I'll come back to that. The second thing is, maybe let's go further east, because by the word east, and this is all arbitrary, isn't it? Because there's philosophies everywhere, but by the east, we're really talking about India. Let's go a bit further. Let's go to China. Go to China, and now you've got something very deep, I think. The ideas which I'm exploring, I think, were expressed first, that I'm aware of, not in words, but in a diagram, which is the yin-yang symbol, where you've got the idea of the Tao is yin and yang. These are the same things. And that's very close to what I'm saying with it's not the one, it's the one in relationship to itself. And the reason I say that is just look. It's like, just look now. It's clearly the one in relationship to itself, isn't it? It's the one in many forms in relationship to itself. And this idea that we're kind of all perfect already and it's all there, and it's like, is that right? Or is there a vast formless emptiness which we can connect
Right.
to? But it's not all perfect already. The perfection and the growth and the evolution and the more emergent is coming through the process of being. Consciousness also, surely, is coming with a subject and an object. When there's no subject and object, you're in deep sleep. There's no consciousness. The idea that you know, the formless, I think, is formless. It has no qualities other than being, none. It's only in the process of becoming that it takes on qualities. And then through that qualities, it can reach towards goodness and perfection and all those things, whatever they mean, depending on what criteria we're using. But we move towards them, I feel. So we've got, again, this idea of the fall, which underlies a lot of spirituality, is we were already perfect and then we fell. This emergent or evolutionary spirituality goes, no, that's a negative, very nihilistic view, really. Oh, it was all great and then we fucked up. But this view is going, no, 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 we are growing towards, the whole universe is growing towards ever greater levels of emergence. And if the current scientific...
I agree completely. I follow you on that. I think the
Great.
one part, it was more the understanding of, or from what I understand so far on my path or in that process, is that this pure consciousness is, like you say, pure and filled and perfect, so to speak. And it's not that I fell off from that. I don't believe that. I agree with you. This is the old philosophy.
Yep.
It is more that I am at any moment, at all time, that pure consciousness. And that story of Manon is arising within it. Yes,
I would slightly reword it for myself, because I'm no longer comfortable with this idea of pure consciousness. I think it's actually a reification of something which is, it's not actually there. I think the better word is the old Greek word, being, because and that you can be conscious of being, like you can be conscious of the world or conscious of a thought. You can be conscious of being, and that is always there. And everything has that quality, and Manon has that quality, and Tim has that quality. But the universe can become conscious of that fundamental quality of being only through a being like Manon. The universe arising as something this emergent. You know, we've you know, I love this. We've come 14 billion years ago. The universe was pretty much nothing but hydrogen, and now it's us talking about the universe. And in that process, it's become more and more formed and more conscious, until now, through us, it can be conscious of the fact that it's all one, that it is the ground of being. And that, I think, is what is for me is now a better way of languaging it, and it changes my perception at the same time. Does that make any sense? Or at least have I expressed it in a way that you can at least contemplate, Manon? Is that?
Yes, definitely.
Great.
I'd like to say something, and I feel stunned by hearing what you're expressing, which is something that I'm realizing now, is that why are we here? The old question, why are we here? We're here for the reasons that you're talking about, that we are, the glory of being human is incredible. I mean, we can look around us and see these faces and know what people are doing in their lives. And the wonder of it is, and what Rick was talking about a moment ago, is the magic of the connection that we have, which we call love, and the newness of that as it happens. So being human is a gift of grace, but it still is part of, I love the image of the yin and the yang, because it's perfectly expresses the consciousness, the wholeness, and our minds, because we are conditioned human beings, are so tied in to duality that it's very hard for us to see the difference in the oneness and see it as wholeness.
Absolutely beautifully put. I love that. I love that. That's beautiful. And, you know, I would just like to you know, again, point out what I think really is the obvious, but it's sometimes really helpful to see it. it's like there's a kind of idea you get a lot in spirituality. You didn't just express this. I'm just going somewhere else. That's again, that we're kind of perfect. We're born perfect, and then we get conditioned, and then we're stuck. And you know, really, what's happening, I think, is that every generation comes into the world, and it has to be, just as its body needs to arise, so does its imagination, and it needs ideas. And it picks up the ideas of the ancestors, which is whatever culture it's been born in, and the subcultures that its parents are in, and all, and it takes on, and each parent, hopefully, you know, they do their best to pass on the best ideas, and then they're enculturated. And then there comes a moment, and everyone on this call will have had this moment, I'm sure, because you wouldn't be here otherwise, where you realize, oh, hang on, I'm seeing the world through an enculturated set of ideas. And that brings doubt. And that's the first awakening, I think. It's the waking up from your cultural conditioning. But your cultural conditioning isn't a bad thing. It's a necessary thing. You couldn't possibly exist without it. But also you need to get to the point, and that's what we want, say, in teenagers and good education, where you can then doubt it and stand back from it and go, well, which bit is good here? And then keep that, and which bit needs to evolve? And then you can change that, or open yourself up and go exploring. And then, well, in my experience, that's never stopped. I'm still doubting things I didn't even notice I believed, and then going, hang on a second, is that right? And going, no, it's not, huh? And then moving on. And that's one form of the waking up. And then through that, we can then start opening up to these transcendental levels. And that's also, I'm sure, happening to everyone here, whereby suddenly at some point you, poof, oh my God. And there's a whole new quality of experience. And what's happening there, and why it's so beautiful and so powerful, and you know, you can't miss it, is that you're experiencing the more emergent. It's the most emergent thing in this 14 billion year process. So when you touch it, you notice it. It really is like something new that we're collectively entering into. And some great people have opened the doorways for us many centuries ago, but we're still just beginning to find it. And as we do, we're making the world a better place. There's more compassion now than there's ever been. You know, people think the world's in a bad place, but they don't know anything about history if they think that. This is the best time in history to be alive by such a long way, in my humble opinion. Anyone else want to pick up on any of that before we move on?
Yes, I'd like to, if I could.
Yeah.
I had a vision when we had that meditation an hour ago, and of being in the oneness, and somehow this visualization came up when you started using words like entangled and a network of, if you vision a donut where there's a ball of reality that we're inside of, like a bubble, and inside of that there's a connection, a hole that's a connection to the light and the oneness as well. And we sort of have conduits. Each of us is a conduit from the oneness on the outside to the oneness on the inside, and that we have that is a stream that goes in that conduit. And by us entangling with each other, we draw the energy or the oneness or the love through the conduit. And if we just are a straight conduit, we're not making anything interesting. And by interacting and entwining with each other and the earth and all the other conduits, we make a beautiful web. And it was like a visual that came to me, and I just wanted to share it. And all of this discussion is really making that, filling that example. That's all. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Celia. Anyone else? Anyone else there who's listening to this and thinking, what the hell is he talking about? All right.
Hey, Tim, it's Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm just really appreciating the dichotomy between what you led us in this morning, which is very powerful, and I thought was just really beautiful, pointing out instructions that you offered to help us really recognize and, rest in that beingness. And now, this lively conversation that we're having, it's just really, I'm just really struck by how, there's room for all of it, right?
That's
how
the
there's
key
room
for
for
me.
all of it here within that larger space.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. The basic thing which I think has guided me to end up where I've ended up is that there's bad things, of course there is, but fundamentally, existence is not a mistake. And I've become increasingly, so every time I hear that something's a mistake, it's like, very popular one is the mind. The mind, oh, get rid of that. It's like, really? Is that a mistake? It's a pretty big mistake because it's like enabling us to talk and it's created the internet. Or is it just like everything mixed? And if you use the mind to think terrible thoughts, you'll do terrible things. And if you're stuck in anxiety, which is a horrible experience that many of us have, then it will go round and round and round. But you can also use it to communicate like this and to search for wisdom. And in itself, it is an amazing, amazing ability which we have. So maybe that's a good place for me to just say a few words about the coronavirus from the perspective I'm seeing, which is in this evolutionary process in which it seems to me everything that exists has evolved from what has come before. There's a continual emergence from the ground of being into everything, ever more emergent levels. And we've done that also culturally. One stage grows on the next. And I said earlier, human beings think with the ideas they've got, and they pick up the ideas from the generation before, and that's what they think with. So when I've written, I don't know, 35 books or something. And the early stages, a lot of them were writing about different spiritual traditions and going back into them and finding, oh, look, they're all about waking up to oneness and love. That's interesting. But they all talked about it completely differently, because one was in China in 500 BC and one was Rumi in Persia and 1500 years later. And they all showed the limitations of their own period in history. We all love Rumi, but that's only because he's translated by Coleman Barks, and he misses out the 12th century cleric, who you will also find if you actually go to Rumi, which I've done. And I love him, but he's also, and that's because everyone's embedded in their own time. Of course they are, and we are too. And I hope that anyone who might stumble upon this conversation in 100 years' time and go, oh, what's that? Would think, oh my God, we've come so far since then. I hope so. So we have these processes, and one of the if you just take rather crude stages, you can see, I think, that there's a religious or a mythic, what sometimes gets called a pre-rational stage, which is where we see religion functioning. And it's pre-rational because it's pre-doubt. You haven't yet, you grow up into your culture, and the most important thing is you keep the culture going. Tradition. Why? Because you're not going to live very long. And if you lose the wisdom that's been accumulated, that's not a good thing. So what you've got wisdom, hang on to it, don't change it, just keep it going. And that's kind of and the understanding is very much a projection of what now seem almost like childlike images. The myths of Adam and Eve, or all of these things. The universe exists on the back of a turtle. No one goes, yeah, but what's the turtle on? Or you just don't think that thought. So no one asks. So it's pre-rational, and it's mythic, and it was very, very dominant for a very long time. It probably is still the dominant in the world. And then from that came the Enlightenment, which was the birth of doubt and of thinking about implications. If there is a turtle, what is it on? For instance, questioning how things hold together. And that led us into the scientific revolution, which 400 years later has utterly transformed our lives and given us the most enormous amount of knowledge of the universe, which any of our ancestors could not possibly have dreamt about. And it's just starting. And it just incredible. Well, look, here we are now, for goodness sake, speaking somehow across the world in this way. And the other thing I think which is important about that movement into rationality and science, it was a massive increase in compassion. We tend to think that it's not compassionate, but actually it was. Because if you go back to the pre-rational views, they're not very nice, I don't think. There's still a lot of them around. The basic idea is that if you suffer, God wants you to suffer because God's in control of everything. Or it's your karma, something you did. You deserve this suffering. Why is your baby born with one arm? Well, it must have done something bad in a previous life, or maybe you did something bad in a previous life. These were the dominant ideas. And this new compassionate understanding came in and went, no, it's just bad luck. Shit happens. We should care for each other. And this whole amazing journey of relieving suffering started, in which we have transformed the world where most of your kids will die by the time they're 5, into, at least in our culture, where no one expects their kids to die. And when they do, it's an unspeakable tragedy. And that's all been done through this rational scientific understanding of the world. However, its success has been to do with a philosophy called reductionism, which is basically going, the way to understand something is to see how the parts within it interact. It's a very, very good way to understand how things work. It's a very bad way of understanding what things are. And in particular, scientific reductionism has been very keyed into its big successes, which is in physics and then later in biology. And then it stops really, and it goes, what really exists is just the world of the senses. But of course, what really exists isn't just the world of the senses. And it's astonishing that anyone could think so, because we're communicating now in a realm which isn't of the senses, which is full of meaning and story. And none of these words would make, in the world of the senses, I'm just a guy making funny noises. But in the realm of the psyche, you're hearing meaning. So what's happened is that spiritual people now have got caught up in a kind of a mistake. And the mistake often is that they see rationality as reductionism, as this narrow view. It's not. Rationality is just believing things for a good reason. It's adopting doubt. It's being able to really think things through. It's a good thing on every level. And that rationality can lead you, as it's just done to me, to go, and reductionism is not a good idea. It's a very narrow idea. So people can often think that rationality is reductionism, that science is is like a denial of this other realm that we experience of awakening and beauty and meaning and the soul and life after death and all these things which I think are completely real. Magic, synchronicity, the meaning of the journey, everything that makes the spiritual experience is ruled out, and it often is, by the prevalent interpretation of science. What I think we need, however, so what you get then often is a return to pre-rational thought in spirituality. What I think we need is the next step, which is actually trans-rational or trans-scientific, by which I mean it transcends that understanding of the universe and adds something more. So it understands, wow, the scientific understanding has been so good on physics and biology, rubbish on this other level. But we can help with that other level. And we don't have to deny rationality. We don't have to devalue the mind. We don't have to say it's a bad thing. We actually have to be even better at using it. We need to be the best at using it. And my hope is that this trans-scientific spirituality can play a massive role in taking us into this next phase of human evolution. I think it's what is needed to do it. And the problem is that spirituality isn't in a state to do it. It's either pre-rational, mythic thinking, or it's life-denying, let's all get away to the oneness thinking. Both of which belong to the past and are going to be completely useless to us in making this next step. It looks to me. What's interesting about what's happening to us right now, and I'll just say a few things, is that it looks like, it's still too early to say, probably in the UK and the US, but certainly in Italy and Spain and China, Iran, it looks like we're being hit by a tsunami of suffering, is the phrase I keep hearing myself. just this, whoa, here it comes. And our generation have not experienced that. You know, my dad and mum were in the Second World War, but I've not experienced anything like that. I've lived a really easy, comfortable life. I've never seen the world in lockdown, ever. I've never seen this level of fear of something that could come, and fear with good reason. Fear is another thing which gets a bad press. We fear because it's sensible. It can get out of hand. It can be too much. People keep contrasting fear with love. What's that? I fear because I love. I'm frightened my kids will get hurt because I love them, or my wife, or whoever. These things that, you know, the human experience is not bad. And so what I'm seeing at the moment is a lots of things. So what would be the trans-rational, the trans-scientific approach to coronavirus, I ask myself. And here's what I think. It would be, wow, we've got this, you know, there's been a transmission, a zoonotic spillover is what they call it. From one species, had this virus and it's now gone into human beings. And because we're so connected now, woof, it spread. And somehow we need to meet that unfortunate tragedy with compassion and courage and service and wisdom, which is the hard thing. How do you love? You know, what's the right course? Do you close down? Do you not close down? These are wisdom questions. And through that, if we have the vision, maybe we can learn a whole load of stuff. And we can look back and we can say to those people who are right now suffering and dying in hospitals in Italy and Iran, we can say, we will do our best that your death is not in vain. And that we will become wiser through it and kinder through it. And we'll create a better world because this will wake us up. That to me is a trans-scientific spirituality. That's what it would say, something like that. But what I want to point out is what I'm coming across on the internet, and I don't know whether you are or not. And if you're not, this may be not relevant to you. But if you are, you might want to join me in trying to alert people to the fact that this is not a good process. Because what I'm coming across is a lot of pre-rational stuff, which is very well intentioned, but actually grotesque. So I'm constantly being sent videos and messages, or seeing them online, messages from the earth. Basically, you know, I'm doing this to you, you know, because it's for your own good. I'm doing this, you have been hurting me, and now I'm waking you up. The earth is an angry mother. And I love you, you know, the message is, I love you, but this is for your, this is what you have to experience. I'm coming across videos saying, thank you, coronavirus, for coming and waking us up. Let me just read you this one. This is from a Catholic source. Someone sent it to me, thinking I'd like it. It's all in verse. And you get a whole list about the standard things which I'm hearing, which is, look, we're all so busy and now it's stopped us. And we were also involved in our work and now we're backing off and now we're listening to nature and it all sounds pretty idyllic. And we're all, you know, it's all, you know, and then at the end we get, so Corona, thanks for coming. Truth to tell, we needed you. But don't overstay your welcome. That, alas, would never do. And my heart breaks, honest to God, my heart breaks when I read it. Corona, thanks for coming. It's like right now, people like you and me are in the most awful, awful, awful situation where they can't breathe. They have got no ventilators. They've got no care. They can't be with their loved ones. Thanks for coming, coronavirus. It's like, whoa, what the hell? What's that? It's not spirituality as I understand it. And that's the old pre-rational, that, you know, God wills this. And we've gone from the vindictive father to the vindictive mother. And I really want to speak against it and for us to find a different response. It reminds me of what happened with AIDS, with the fundamentalist Christian community. AIDS came in and then quick as a witch, you know, see, we told you, all those damn homosexuals, that's God. He's really angry and he doesn't like gays. And now it's spreading and, oh shit, babies are getting it. Well, I don't know. And what was being done was a natural occurrence, a natural tragedy on the biological level, was being interpreted through somebody's preconditioned ideas to endorse them. Now, the difference is I'm not a fundamentalist, and I don't hate homosexuals. And I do think it would be great if we took cared for the planet. But fundamentally, what I'm seeing is people living very comfortable lives in very nice places, parts of the world, where nothing's really hit yet, announcing that this is a good thing. And so once again, I go, what would be the trans scientific spiritual response? I think it's to go, look, well, this is happening on the biological level. So what's our actual understanding of that? Well, on the biological level, the Earth isn't doing anything. The Earth isn't making it happen. It's the transfer of a virus. And we should deal with it on that level. And then we go to the soul level and we go, and it exists in our story now. And we will bring meaning to this. And we can learn from this. And we can see the significance in this. And there is pretty interesting things we can, there's like, whoa, yeah, what could we work together with this in a way that we then could work to look after the Earth? Yes, we could. Could we work together and with this in a way that we saw that constant expansion of the economy there was more important things? Yes, we can. We can learn great, profound wisdom from this suffering without having to spiritualize it away, without having to fall into spiritual bypassing and making it something which is, thank you, coronavirus, I'm so glad that you came. Which to me, it's like that. If this tsunami hits, that's going to sound so hollow. And I want a spiritual community which has got much greater depth than that. And that's why I'm actually, my friends, and I don't know whether I've been able to convey it in a way that I want to, but this is the first actually of 3 presentations I'm going to do on coronavirus. And this is my first attempt to try and say it. So there you go. That's what I want to offer you. Please do tell me what you think.
Tim, I like how you open the door, to bring our attention to this time that we're living now and stretch into this. Because what you're talking about is Don Beck and Ken Wilber. For some of you that don't know them, I think you know this, the growth development that we are in to transcend this old way of thinking, and really it's demanding all of our being really to trust, because nothing, it is unknown. It is unknown to everybody. And this is where it gets scary. But the thing is that it has to happen also on a collective level. And this is your invitation, is to stretch our way of thinking to transcend that. How could we respond in that way? And so for that, I really appreciate the stretch. And I have no answer, something is pulling, but I don't know, right? So it's an interesting inquiry, yeah. At the same time, there's this spiritual love and trust that I can abide in that, and trust that by the willingness to stretch, something will come up, and in our collective, and somebody somewhere will pick it up. I
love that. I love that. Yes, that's how I feel too, man. I would say, I honest to God, I don't know how people get through that don't have a connection with, well, I increasingly use the old-fashioned word God, the thing which is bigger, and the most emergent thing that's arisen in the universe. If I didn't have that, I think I don't know how I'd have got through my life. And that is what, there is something good here, but it's not doing the bad things. It's the other way around. It's like this is all emerging into that greater good. And our job is to find that greater good and help it emerge into it. And we have to deal with every level on its own level, which is why, we can understand these crises really well with all these narratives, but we need to deal with it as a biological crisis, which thank goodness most of us are. And it's why It's why that part of the spiritual community, alas, feels like it's so far behind the beat. It's so stuck in the past. You know, while science has been evolving at an express train for 400 years, it's hardly changed. And it's now reimagining things in a just a new language, that's all. And with the same unconsciousness to the inherent unkindness of it. And that's the thing which hurts me, because I just see people saying these things from a good place and not seeing just how unkind that really is. Oh, thanks, coronavirus. It's like, whoa, God, really? Anyone else want to respond to that? Have I stuck my neck out all right? Was it okay? Because I didn't know your group, so I just took it on myself to just say what's going on for me.
You know, what I appreciate so much that you're pointing to, Tim, is it's almost like we are being asked so deeply to be so present to everything that's going on, to the very ordinary level of our deep biological humanity and the suffering that so many people are going through right now, along with being completely open and present to this this evolutionary movement, this opening that's undeniable, that's happening right now, whether we look at it as facing what's so uncertain in our day-to-day lives, or facing the uncertainty of how do we deeply sit in ground and trust.
Yeah.
But we're being asked to stretch in a way that includes it all, and keeps opening to something we can't even imagine here, but is possible as we sit together, as we practice together, as we open together. And so I very much appreciate your bringing all of this forward today. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. I love that. Yeah, that really resonates with me. That's yeah. Anyone else in the few minutes we have?
This is Jim. I can thank. Hi, Tim. Yeah, kind of along Joanna is saying, it's this conventional way of thinking that we so much take for granted that needs to be questioned. I think that for me, you're really bringing that sense of humility and that willingness to question the listening that we are, and just be with it, include what's going on, be realistic, bring in compassion. And to me, it feels very much like you're opening up a door inside our listening for another possibility. And it's almost as simple as that. It's including what's there conventionally, seeing it and recognizing that it falls short of what it's called for, and then asking questions about what is to move us from here. And that's what I appreciate about you and what you're saying. And I also appreciate when I look at you and watch you speak, there's a natural sense of enthusiasm in you. And I think enthusiasm in the sense of being moved by the divine. So you're actually standing in a place that allows us to look and feel what you're calling us to do. So just want to thank you and acknowledge you for that. So it's good to make your acquaintance, and thank you.
Likewise, Jim. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, it feels like it would be appropriate, if it's all right with you, Rick, in the 2 minutes to 6, to just take a moment here to take all of this love and this goodwill. That's what strikes me about when I come to a community like yours. It's like you are good people, or probably more accurately like me, you're people who are doing your best to be good people. But you are. And that's what knits us together. That something in us wants to do our best to be good people, to find the good, to serve what's good on the deepest possible way. So let's take all of that and let's just send it out with the power of the imagination to everywhere that's facing this crisis right now, and in particularly those people who are really having to face it in the most horrible situation. Let's just take a minute and do that. So thank you for inviting me into your community. Thank you, Rick, and all the other organizers who I got the pleasure of actually talking to in person before we started. And if anyone is interested in what I'm exploring, then yeah, like I've got such a funny name. If you Google me, you'll find my website, Tim Freke, as long as you spell it Freke. And you are most welcome to try, to tip your toe into our community, which is meeting today, actually. The International Community of Individuals. Rick can tell you about that. You can find stuff on the website. You can contact me and I will tell you about it. It's a small community of people who want to explore this new approach to spirituality and finding the next spirituality that needs to come through, really, both experientially and philosophically. And it is a subscription. It's not subscription, it's donation, and basically it's like people just give whatever they want, and if you're interested in that, you can just put your toe in and see what you think. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Just feeling your individuality and that loving individuality, and I appreciate it. I just think I'll unmute everyone and we can just all say goodbye in our own way. So
Much
thank you.
gratitude and love.
Thanks so much.
Everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Tim.
coming.
You all
Much
Thank
love
you, everybody.
to everyone.
for being here.
Love to everyone.
Ciao.
Stay safe.
Love to all.
Happy for this nourishing talk.
Be well. Stay.
Thank you all.
Much love, everyone.
Much love.
Ciao.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, George.